Good morning. Once Scott's told me how to use the IT. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to one and all. We're live from the Luttrell Room in Somerset County Hall in the heart of Taunton Town Centre on a sunny day, on a bright and breezy Friday morning. Thank you all very much for coming, those in the room and also those joining online, and for the many people who are joining us live streaming this event as well. You're most welcome to be here. We're looking forward to an interesting couple of hours. My name is Ross Henley. I'm chair of the Corporate and Constitution and Governance Committee even. And again, as I've already welcomed you, today's meeting will be run using our webcasting system via Microsoft Teams. Our committee members and key officers are physically present in the council chamber, as you've seen, in the Luttrell Room in Taunton. Other elected members, as I've just alluded to, are here in the room and also joining us online via Microsoft Teams. And members of the public and officers may physically or remotely join this meeting to speak on any specific agenda items or observe the meeting because they want to. And this meeting is being webcast, and therefore, as I alluded to, other members of the public and partners can observe the meeting remotely. The agenda pack is available as usual via ModGov or directly from the council website from the link which was set out to members last week. When you're invited to speak, please could you speak clearly into the microphone and state who you are for the benefit of anybody who's listening to the meeting so they can identify who's speaking. And also that the meeting is being audio recorded. Finally, as agendas are now viewed electronically, could I kindly request that members and officers refer to page numbers from the published agenda pack to assist all present in finding the appropriate information. And item number 1, moving swiftly on, is apologies for absence. I haven't personally received any myself, nor has Tim, but Pippa, have you received any? No apologies for absence. Okay. And item number 2 is the minutes of the previous meetings on the 14th of January, the 10th of February, and the 3rd of March, which is on page 9 to 26. And can we treat these as a true record of which took place at those 3 meetings? Do I have a proposer? Proposer and Councillor Lovell and Councillor Curley. Dawn got in there as quick as well. We've got 3 people there. All those in favour of accepting the minutes of those meetings? Thank you. Thank you. Any declarations of interest other than those already duly published under the usual declarations of interest? And item number 4 is public question time. Also, don't have any recorded public questions. I don't know if there's any public questions. We're joined by some members in the room or any members who are, or members of the public watching. People, we haven't noticed any public questions, have we? Okay, we'll treat that as no. And moving swiftly on then to item number 5, which is the Somerset Council Constitution Review, pages 27 to 236, quite a long meaty item. I'm going to invite Scott Waldridge now, the Head of Democratic and Governance Services, to introduce the report included in the agenda pack. Thank you, Scott.
Thank you, Chair. And again, hopefully councillors will be more than aware of the approach that we've been taking to the review of the council's constitution. We do so on an annual basis. You'll see certainly within the agenda pack, certainly if you look at paragraph 3, just a reminder of areas where the committee reviewed the constitution roughly this time last year ahead of the council's annual general meeting in May 24. You'll see in paragraph 4 where we've been undertaking further review work during 24-25, and we've been looking again at areas around public participation, council procedure rules, the committee structure rules, audit committee terms of reference, licensing, harbour management, executive terms of reference, senior management structure, officer employment procedure rules, contract procedure rules, and the monitoring officer protocol. It's probably fair to say, and you'll note that in Appendix 1, there is a summary in terms of the areas particularly identified for proposed changes. I'd say the vast majority of those changes flow from points of clarification. I'll give you an example. There are some generic terms in parts of the Constitution that make reference to citizens. People may be aware that citizens are generally people who either live in a city or live in a republic, and hopefully you'll appreciate that Somerset is neither of those. It is a county, and therefore we're proposing again, hopefully, and it's some of the feedback we've had from members, that we change all those references to residents. And similarly, there are also the odd unfortunate reference to chairman in some places rather than chair, which is our most common reference for chairs of committees. The other areas, particularly in terms of some of the main parts, are clearly flowing from the council's organisation restructure that leads to a number of technical changes throughout the proposed constitution, which is why you have references to the senior management structure. It's to make sure that the latest version is then shown. Other points particularly then have focused on public participation and clarifying some of the areas around how the public can participate and be involved in the various council meetings. And then you'll see in the full council procedure rules, again, a range of improvements that are proposed to improve the full council meetings to ensure that the key business for full council can be dealt with within the scheduled time that we have. And again, also particularly also reflecting in terms of members' feedback, both around full council, but also with some of the various committees as well. So it rather than take you through page by page, line by line, I'll appreciate that many of you will have had the opportunity already to see the proposals in full. Apologies that the papers are voluminous in nature. Again, that's about just being transparent. Hopefully the summary within the report, particularly section by section. So if you were to look at, say, well, what are the changes around public participation? If you look at paragraph 7, there's a table that summarises those. What are the changes in terms of improving full council procedures? Again, there's a table at paragraph 9. What are the changes around the committee structure? Again, there's paragraph 10, which just clarifies those points. Most of these about connecting parts of the constitution. Audit committee terms of reference. Again, there's a minor recommended change just so it's super clear that the audit committee has oversight of both the anti-fraud and corruption policies along with whistleblowing policy arrangements. So again, these are all just points of clarity and feed off feedback that we've had, including in that instance from our external auditors. Obviously, Harbour Management Advisory Committee, just clarifying the arrangements of co-opted members. The executive arrangements, the only real change there is currently we have a article which is headed up Article E1, which sets out both the executive and the executive subcommittees. The change is basically to break up the very same words, so it reads E1, E2, E3, E4, E5, just so it separates out the subcommittees rather than just keep them within a single document. And finally, on part I5, which is the Officer Employment Procedure Rules, again, I think it's fair to say that we have used those rules over the past 2 to 3 years. They were effectively the former county council's officer employment rules. For consistency, we maintain them because we were clearly doing lots of senior management recruitment as part of restructures and vesting day, but we've been taking the opportunity to look at a number of our peer councils, and again, that's identified the need for a more comprehensive review. But in terms of more fundamental changes, there's no fundamental changes within them. But again, it's about making them much clearer. And at that point, I'll pause because hopefully then it provides a better opportunity then for councillors to raise any points about some of the proposals that are here before the committee. The key role of the committee clearly to debate the proposed improvements that have come forward from feedback, and then the recommendation is then following that debate for the committee to agree to then recommend these changes to the full council's annual general meeting, which is on the 21st of May.
Thank you very much, Scott. I'm now going to invite any committee members who wish to speak on this matter. Thanks. Thank you. That's Barry.
Thank you, Chair. Scott, back in December, this might not be the place. We ought to do this at the planning committee terms of reference. But back in December, I requested could we talk about a couple of changes that we would like to make. One applied to the chair and the vice chair's ability to send things to planning without any further debate and without reference to the rest of the planning committee. It said something like they should but there's no obligation for them to do it. And if you have a chairman with a particular passion for something, he can route that application where he wants it to go without sending it to the planning committee. I did ask if we could change that. And the other point was a very small one where we're taking a long time over some debates on particular applications. And we have several small applications that could be disposed of in 5 minutes at the same meeting. And I did ask if we could have a separate. Yeah.
People online. No, we can hear you loud and clear.
Oh,
but
okay.
People who are not here listening
Okay.
online probably won't be able to hear you very well.
Okay, apologies. Whether we can have a two-tier meeting system, so we had all the small applications went to a meeting and the larger applications took up a meeting of their own. I mean, we can debate things like there's one near Frome. It just occupies the whole afternoon and some of the evening as well. And the small people are just looking to put a porch on their house. You know, they're not getting a look in and they're deferred for up to 2 planning meetings. So it was just those 2 points which I can't find that they were ever addressed or are going to be.
Pick this one up.
So those have been captured and are feeding into the proposed review of what are known as the Planning Committee Terms of Reference. You'll see in paragraph 5 of this report, we've identified that there are further reviews that we've not been able to complete ahead of this meeting or ahead of the May AGM. And those 3 reviews relate to a further review of the Planning Committee Terms of Reference, and there's a separate report on today's agenda about that. So we can pick up some of those points as part of that. The other one, as members will be aware, is we've recently commissioned through Scrutiny Committee Corporate Resources, and we've got the chair of that committee here with us today, a review of our Scrutiny Committee function and arrangements. So you'll be aware that that's a live review. So that's why it's not part of the proposals today. And similarly, a further review in terms of our financial regulations as well. So just to highlight, the points that Councillor Clark has raised have not been lost. They are featuring in the forthcoming review of the Planning Committee Terms and Reference. But again, we'll talk about that. There's a separate item on today's agenda specifically about that review.
Thank you, Scott. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Scott. Any other members? Councillor Wade.
Thank you, Chair. A couple of points. I wasn't going to raise it, but going on from Councillor Clark, somewhere in here there's and I can't quote it, I'm sorry, is that the members of the Planning Committee have to have a certificate, having been trained. Now, I've been trained, and I think most of us on planning have been trained. I'm not aware of a certificate. I certainly haven't received one, whether we're supposed to have done or not. But according to the Constitution, we have to be in possession of a certificate. Now, I would suggest that the wording should be something, have been trained and passed that training, or better put than that. But because I'm not sure that anyone's been issued with one of these certificates or not. Have they? Looking around me.
Who'd like to pick this one up? Thank you.
Again, just to clarify, none of the proposals in this report that we're discussing relate to the Planning Committee Terms of Reference. That's a piece of work which we are going to be undertaking, and we will be undertaking that review over the coming months, and that's another item on today's agenda. Well, I mean, again, just so it's not lost, I think it's something we can probably return to when we get to that agenda item. But whilst we're doing that, I will check the Planning Committee Terms of Reference to see if there is any reference in there to a certificate in relation to members completing training.
It's somewhere in this, in the report. I've read it. I didn't make a note of where it is, but it's somewhere within these papers, Scott.
Okay.
It mentions certificate. So the other thing, if I may, while I have the floor, Chair, if I could, page 29, paras 3.18b and 3.18c. I'm not, perhaps I missed this or wasn't on the committee or whatever, But can you explain to me the petition? And it appears to be that it then will be considered by the local community network. Is that all petitions, or is that particular petitions, or aren't petitions going to go to full council anymore? I'm confused by those two sections. It's my fault, but perhaps that could be explained, Chairman.
Want to pick that one up, Scott, and then Leslie wants to come in as well and come back, I think, on the original point. Yeah, Leslie.
So on the LCN point, you'll see currently the public participation rules within the Constitution make a provision whereby a report can be given in relation to a petition which could be considered at a local community network. So there's a provision within the existing arrangement which would allow for petitions to come to local community networks, again helping to, I think, identify their role at a local level with people bringing local matters of concern. That is in addition to the other routes that people can bring petitions to this council, whether it's to a committee, whether it's to the executive, or whether it's to the full council. And the change we're recommending is, again, just qualifying some of the wording on an existing provision. Just that. We've not added a provision or taken something away. We're just refining some of the words.
Okay.
Leslie.
Yeah, can I just finish on that, Chairman? Sorry, Mayor. On LCNs, I apologise again if I've missed it, but the constitutional LCNs are in here somewhere, are they? Yeah.
They are, but they're not part of this review. So I've not looked at them, but yes, part of the Constitution has got a specific article relating to local community networks, but they've not been reviewed as part of this.
But well, I suppose the question therefore, Chairman, is are they going to be reviewed and with some urgency? Is there any, no?
Again, you'll see in terms of the report, we've set out the priority areas for review are the planning committee terms of reference, the scrutiny committee terms of reference, and the financial regulations. However, again, I mean, if the committee feel that you would like officers to also review the local community network terms of reference, then we can look at that as part of what would be our 25-26 review and look at when that could be programmed in. But again, that's the very reason why, you know, we welcome bringing these items here, just so we can see your direction on these things.
Thank you. I presume therefore that it's a suggestion perhaps for the working schedule rather than this moment. So I'll pass on that. Thanks, Chairman.
Leslie, do you want to come and answer one of Martin's earlier points? Then Theo wants to.
Yes, Chair, if I could bring a little bit more clarity to Councillor Wales' question about certificates for members sitting on the planning committee. This is something that will be covered in the planning and infrastructure bill, which will come onto the statute books later in the year. And as Scott said, it will be covered in the separate report which follows in this agenda. So hopefully that brings some assurance to you.
Councillor Butt-Philip.
I just wanted to say on LCNs, it is intended that we conduct a review of LCNs and the wider localities work, which may of course have knock-on effects which the committee might want to consider, but I would recommend against starting a separate review because there may be sort of things that play out through that.
Councillor Johnson.
Yeah, I was similar to Councillor Well. I was looking at that point 5 where it didn't mention the LCN review, which I understand we've got a SWAT internal review of LCNs, and they were due a 2-year review from the outset. So I think we do probably need to look at the LCN terms of reference as part of ongoing reviews of LCNs.
I think the only thing just to flag, I mean, the creation of local community networks and their ongoing support and management is primarily a function of the executive. And I know that reviews have been undertaken before and they've been reported through both the relevant scrutiny corporate resources and then onward to the executive. I'm not suggesting that this committee can't look at the terms of reference. What I'm trying to highlight is that if when the committee is asking for us to review the terms of reference, if it's actually about the function and role, purpose and outcome of LCNs, that's more of a matter for the executive. If it's that you believe there's a need for some constitutional improvements, then yes, that's certainly within the scope. So if it's about the terms of reference aren't helping with the meetings, they could perhaps be improved, that's definitely within this scope. But if it's more about the role of the LCNs, their functions, how they're operating, that's very much a matter for the executive and scrutiny.
Councillor Johnson, do you want to come back?
So having chaired the Taunton LCN for a couple of years now, I think there are some elements of the terms of reference that would be useful to revisit.
I think at the point of what Councillor Butt Phillips said, there's ongoing piece of work there, and we will be revisiting this issue again, and that's quite appropriate, really, isn't it? Because they are brand new to this council, and some things have worked better than others, and it's quite appropriate at the appropriate time that we do review how they work. Any other comments?
Sorry, can I just check on that? Where does that leave it? What does it need a proposal for that to come forward as a request for a review of the terms of reference? Okay.
That's something. I mean, you're saying that's something you would like formally?
No, I'm happy with it to go onto the work
Don't
programme.
just let it sit there. When they have our chair and vice chairs meet as officers, as we have done with the issue that Henry's very interested in, we'll make sure that this is plumbed in for a particular date to come forward. We won't just have to sort of wither on the vine.
Okay, thank you.
Tim, come to.
Thank you, Chair. Well, I'd like to thank officers for this report. It's very detailed, but thankfully for my brain, the changes were fairly minor. The one thing I want to just draw attention to is what I think quite sensible proposals for public and member questions. I think it's always a really difficult balancing act to get this right. We've got the two needs, our own need for a quick meeting and also the need for democracy. I think that there's some incremental changes in here, and I think that's probably the best approach. Yeah, so that we don't sort of upset the apple wagon, as it were. So yeah, really pleased with this. The detail of this I was really quite impressed with as well. So one thing that I did notice on here was a really minor thing, removing the attendance sheet. So I just thought it's little efficiency things like that actually sort of add up. So thank you, Chair.
Can I backtrack as well, actually? And although we passed this item, I'm quite happy to accept it. Just received on email apologies from Councillor Osborne. Can we add that to the list, please? Thank you. Any other further comments or members, or we can? There's nobody. Okay, Councillor Pugsley.
Merely to say, Mr. Chairman, that I think we could be in danger of over-egging the pudding on the LCNs because there is other work going on with them. It was part of the peer challenge, and there is work as a result of the peer challenge that will be undertaken. So I think that we've got to be a bit cautious about involving too many committees in looking at the LCNs. I think there needs to be a sequence. It needs to be properly planned through. We don't all want to pile in.
Any other comments, member? Dawn Johnson, you want to come?
Yeah, just to say that I think the terms of references is a very specific part of the LCNs, and I agree there's lots of different reviews in theory taking place, but I think the terms of reference are a very specific part of the operation of them, which may not be picked up within the other reviews.
I'm not so sure, Mr. Chairman, but anyway, we can debate that elsewhere.
Councillor Wale.
No, Macy, it's the role of councillor, a part of the Constitution. I've just been going through it, or trying to. And the odd thing is, it never mentions whether a councillor what a councillor represents. And we got into this one when we were doing the Boundaries Commission. Is when is an elected area a division, or when it is a ward, or what is it? And I think it's time we actually pinned this down, actually, because I don't think we represent divisions anymore, but I don't know. Do we represent wards?
Well, I think we pin it down as divisions. I think there was a thing when we were actually practically almost pinning it down as wards, but then there was a rethink and we checked the clarification. I
Well,
think it is division.
Is it in the constitution that they're divisions? Because it all talks about elected area.
Change order of the unitary council stipulates divisions as well.
But,
The legislation does.
well,
yeah.
that's fine. That's what it
Yeah.
is. But as I say, I'm not sure it's in the constitution. If it is, I'll be corrected, Scott.
Stephen, do you want to?
Chair, you were all elected as members of the county council.
Yes.
You are still the county council, but the word county has disappeared. But so you are all members of county divisions. Electoral divisions are what county councillors represent.
Right. Fine. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah.
There we are. We spent an awful lot of time on that, didn't we? It's a ward or a division. Yes. Kellen Kay.
Thank you, and apologies for my lateness. I'm not quite sure if this is actually a constitution issue, but I'm not sure if we have a protocol between how councillors work with officers. And I see at the end there's something about the monitoring officer here, and it says it's the last appendix, and it says that it's one of the things that the monitoring officer looks at is the member and officer responsibilities and their relationship. And I'm just interested to know if we have got a protocol. I should know this. But between, like for example, if I write to an officer, should I expect a response within 2 or 3 weeks? Given the restructure and reorganisation, it might not be the right time to look at that. But I'm just flagging it up and wondering if that is something that we have. Thank you.
Thanks, Helen. Scott will answer that one, but he also wants to come back and add some clarity again to the previous discussion we had about wards and division.
Again, yeah, just to highlight Part A of the Constitution, which is the introductory part, which reads in terms of its initial bit as a glossary, talks about councillor. A councillor is elected as a member of the council. Councillors stand for election normally every 4 years and are accountable to the residents of a specific area, brackets, their electoral division, close brackets. There is a relationship there between division and councillor in Part A. Turning to Councillor Kay's question, yes, there is a specific part of the Constitution, Part H3, which is headed the Protocol on Member Officer Relations. Again, that deals with how members, where they do have some service inquiries or if they have some concerns about services, who and how they should be raising those concerns. If it's helpful, and I could ask, people could probably circulate to all councillors, to the members of this committee for their information, Part H3, just so you can see the content of that.
Any other further comments, councillors? Can't see any members of the council online either want to make any contributions. Dawn Thompson.
I just would like to say I think that might be helpful, Scott, to go to all councillors because it is a question that sometimes comes up in other places.
Councillors, then, if there is no further contributions to debate, I then point you to the recommendation of item number 5, which is that we consider the review findings and proposed amendments set out in the report in its appendices for recommendation to the council's annual council meeting, which takes place on Wednesday week, the 21st of May 2025. All those in favour? That is carried. Moving swiftly on to item number 6, the mid-review of Part D8 of the Council Constitution, the Planning Committee terms of reference. This is something which, for the life of this quadrennium, was not quinennium, isn't it? We visited again and again, and this is we're coming back for a report back from Scott about where we are with this one now. Scott.
Thank you, Chair. I know I've also got my colleague Alison Blom-Cooper online. Many of you know Alison. Alison's the head of planning. And I can also see online we've also got the lead member in the form of Councillor Mike Rigby as well, who can also obviously contribute towards today's debate. You'll see, I know we've already trailed it in some ways as part of the previous item, but there's a specific report here in terms of the current position relating to the proposed review of the Planning Committee terms of reference. You'll all recall that there was an extensive review done about 12 to 18 months ago, and there was a lot of member interest and involvement in that review. That culminated in revisions to the original terms of reference, which were agreed last May, And there was a commitment at that point given to there being a further review just to see how those revised arrangements were going to operate over the course of the next 12 months. You'll see within the report, it's not through want of us not being able to do this. I think our key challenge has just been in terms of resources, but also particularly many of you will be aware, I know Leslie's already referred to this in terms of the government's proposals relating to a current bill, which is also includes within it specific focus around a national scheme of delegation, all of which forms part of a government agenda designed to speed up the determination of planning applications in order to deliver a government's agenda around growth. So in terms of the review, we're very cognizant that in the absence of those known bills becoming law, we want further, it would be helpful if you do a review, not to do one review and then 6 months later do another review because legislation's just changed what you thought you were going to do. Where there is national legislation, you're generally best advised to let that run its course, await the outcome, and then see what it does to our planning committee terms of reference. So as officers, you'll see that we're proposing a phased approach, initially in terms of what you could badge as a light touch review. What are the parts of how the meeting runs? And I know Councillor Clark's made some reference already earlier to some suggestions around the role of the chair. I know other members as well have made some comments as well about what could seem to be improvements to how the meetings operate. So there are those elements, but clearly there are other parts of those terms of reference which are very likely to be affected by the government's proposals, which is why we're proposing a phased review, and hopefully you'll understand that's the reason why we've not been able to complete that review at this point because of those outstanding points. So what you'll see within the report is a proposal around undertaking that review on a phased basis. Again, you'll see reference in section 5, particularly to the relevance of the review and the government's bill. You'll also see there in section 6 a proposal just like we did 18 months ago, a proposal that this committee forms a working group of members to work with officers, because for us as officers it is essential that we get member feedback and steer from what you would like to see. Genuinely, there's nothing worse as officers, us trying to read your minds, coming up with an idea, presenting it to committee and suddenly finding we've completely misread the situation. So we would welcome the working group and your steer and your oversight. And again, you'll see in section 7, again, we had a number of feedback the last time we did the planning committee terms of reference, particularly about the representation on the working group. Many of you recall that previous working group was predominantly made up of the chairs and vice chairs of the actual planning committees. You'll see that this proposal, listening to feedback that was made, particularly at the council meeting in May, we are proposing a broader representation made up of 5 members from the pool of chairs and vice chairs of the 5 committees, 5 members from this committee, and also 5 members not on this committee, which again would allow for other planning committee members or other interested members from across the 110 to be part of the working group, because we all know planning can affect every single division and therefore by that fact affect every councillor in terms of its involvement. And I know in terms of casework, many of you have a lot of casework relating to planning matters. And also we're suggesting, because of the relationship, particularly in terms of the lead members, that there's also the 2 lead members, both Councillor Rigby and Councillor Wilkins, also because think certainly in terms of from a officer perspective, I think it's helpful to have that broad representation and expertise and views available at that working group. So in essence, that's our overview of the current position, the proposal to undertake a phased review, and the recommendation that this committee forms a working group to maintain oversight and steer that review. The conclusion of that review, which will be effectively be the working group's report, which was exactly what we had 12 months ago, will come back to this committee before it goes anywhere else. And as you all know, any changes to the constitution can only be agreed at full council. So in terms of member oversight, working group, member endorsement to go on to council, this committee, but ultimately any changes to the current constitutional arrangements for the planning committee terms of reference will rest as always with full council. I know if Alison, you'll forgive me, I know I've cantered through a fair bit then. If I've missed anything, please feel free to just add if there's any further context.
No, the only thing I would is point out to Councillor Wade that the point about certificates is in clause 45 of the Planning and Infrastructure Bill. So I think that's where you've picked up the idea of members having certificates in order to sit on committee. That is one of the proposals in the Planning and Infrastructure Bill. Together, as Scott has already described, they are going to look at a national scheme of delegation. We understand they're about to go out to consultation on a threshold whereby no application under 10 dwellings would go to a planning committee. So we're about to be asked for comments on that. But that would mean that we wouldn't be dealing with householder applications or any applications for development under 10 dwellings going to committee. That's the proposal. And they're also looking at the size and compositions of committees, essentially to reduce the size of committees. So it's in that context that we're looking at this mini review, as it were like, or the phased review, as Scott's described it, and looking to things that we can change and amend now ahead of any proposals that come out of the bill. The bill's due to become an act this autumn, so it is being fast-tracked. It is already in committee stage.
And that's a dramatic proposed change, isn't it, about not bringing any items to committee under 10 dwellings, and you think immediately it was 9 houses or something, but it could cause a whole multitude of different potential applications and issues there. That's going to be fascinating and interesting. They're looking at the actual composition of committees as well. I once sat on a district council planning committee of 18 members and it was rather unwieldy. And yes, meetings did go on an awful long time. And I think when we looked at this before, I think I'll take this on the chin. I bear responsibility for this. I think that the previous group that looked at this, set up just for the chairs and vice chairs, was probably, I think it's fair to say, too narrow a body to look at that one. And there was some criticism of that. So I'm very pleased to see that we are making this much, much wider, not just chairs and vice chairs, but also really critically, I think, strong membership for this Constitution and Governance Committee and other members as well who are not on either a chair or vice chair planning or on this committee as well. So I think that is a step forward. It's going to be quite an onerous bit of work there, this work to be done in May and June to report back to the committee, but so be. Canon Kay, you wanted to come in?
Thank you. Well, thank you for the report, and I'm pleased to see that it's come today. Thank you very much. I've got a couple of points to make. Right, first of all, I'm pleased to see that it's not just going to be chairs and vice chairs. I did feel that we were pushed out last time. Members of this committee were not able to contribute. So, however, I think it's probably gone the other way. It's gone the wrong way. It's too many now, and I don't quite know. I don't have a proposal for how to reduce it, but there's a potential there to have up to 17 people on this working group, and I'm not quite sure how that's going to work online and really be able to get down to nitty gritty. So it may be that yes, we have the 5 chairs and vice chairs, but then perhaps another 5 or 7 maybe other people. I just want to throw that out there to see what other people think of that, whether they think a 17-member working group is too big. So I just want to throw that out. In terms of the timing, I understand what Alison was saying and yourself about, and Scott about the planning and infrastructure bill, and it's likely in autumn we're going to get some changes. One of the reasons we wanted to do this light touch review is we wanted to kind of sort it all out before that, and because there's some bones of contention, some particular issues that I know a lot of councillors have got at the moment with those terms of reference. I don't know the detail that, for example, that proposal that Alison just said about things under 10. I didn't know that. But the ones over 10, sorry, without going into the issue, sorry, going back to the timing, I'm just wondering, I think there's a full council meeting in July. So rather than I wonder if it's over ambitious to try to get this done, to bring back to full council in July. So we sort of beat the planning and infrastructure bill coming in, which that bill might not come until December. We don't know how soon, they're aiming to get it in the autumn, but autumn, is that September? Is it November? Don't know. So I'm just wondering if we can bring this back to full council. Now, it might be a big ask of the officers. I don't know if we can turn it around that fast. So in terms of timing, I just wanted to throw that up. Personally, unfortunately, as one of the people who's pushed for this, I really wanted to be on the working group, but I've got quite a long holiday coming up, and so I'm going to have to ask my sub to probably do it, depending on the timing and depending on which things you choose to do first. So, for example, if we were to do the public participation first, if we were to do the rights of way first or whatever, I'd quite like to establish what order we might do things in. I don't know if we can establish that today, and then I can decide whether or not to be on the committee or not. That may be too much detail for today. It may be that we just need to get a feel of the volunteers, the size of it, the remit, and then deal with that detail later. In terms of the issues, I know there was an issue about the only having 2 days for councillors to be able to refer things, to agree or not with the officer recommendation. That was one thing that people felt that they didn't have enough time. On another point was that, strangely, we as unitary councillors can no longer actually refer things to committee at all, which felt as if some of our power had been taken away from us. However, parish and town councils can, and quite often we are in agreement with parish and town councils, but not always. Sometimes it does. Our views do differ, and it would be that's one of the things I'd like to include in this review. I don't know if now is the right time to get into those issues. There's a couple of other issues around subs. I'm not really happy with having subs coming from outside one district into another district, but that might be something that the people in the working group look at. Again, I'm not sure if this meeting is the right place to talk about what issues are going to be actually discussed there or not. So there's several things there, number of people, timing, and the actual issues. And I'm sure lots of people have got other things to say about that. Thank you.
Pretty good contribution. Lots of different points there. Who would like to pick that? Scott, or would like to try to pick some of that up?
I mean, again, hopefully you'll see, particularly in terms of paragraph 8, which talks about a light touch review, part of that phased review, focusing work in May and June. The reason it mentions those months is that's deliberately designed for any proposals to come out of that review to come to this committee, with the potential then to go to July's council for that. So that's why it's been. However, if I then flip it back to, so what's within the scope of the review of the planning committee terms of reference, I'd suggest that in some ways that will be very much tempered by the time that's available. Because with only May and June available, I think it's probably best then that through the working group resolves what are the key areas of focus. There are some suggestions in the report, but I think the working group, and I'm conscious, I've certainly had feedback from members which pick up on lots of different parts of the planning committee terms of reference. A light touch review won't be able to do all of those elements in terms of managing expectations. We will be able to do some. So I think what we're proposing through this report is one of the very first jobs for the working group is what are the areas that you want to focus on as part of this first phase review, and get consensus through the working group, and then we complete that work and then bring it here. That's not to say that there isn't further work to be done, which is why I talked about a phased review. But I think that initial piece, it's the, what are the key problems, for want of a better phrase, we really need to try and fix. And then focus efforts in May and June on those.
Can I just come back? I quite understand that there needs to be a prioritisation exercise. So, for example, I might think that's more important than just, you know, I don't know, number of speakers, or mind you, that's important as well. But, you know, there's going to be a bit of a jostle at the beginning of that working group about what we focus on. I agree. What about in terms of the number of people? Do you have anything to say about that, or is that something that we are open for debate here today?
I mean, again, I would be guided certainly by the committee in terms of the composition of the work group. What you have here is our officer suggestions. I do certainly take the point that Councillor Kay is making. You know, there has been experience, I'm not saying at this council, but there is experience generally about the challenges of large working groups in being able to bring together and work productively. Particularly within a short time scale, and how people get meaningful engagement. So yeah, I can reflect that there is evidence nationally in terms of you do need to think about the size of committees and working groups and whether they're too unwieldy. What that size is, we've given a suggestion here that hopefully you'll see is an equitable approach with 5, 5 and 5. But ultimately, this is a working group of this committee, so it is very much for the committee to determine.
Councillor Johnson.
Thank you. Just specifically on the numbers, I agree it's a very unwieldy number that we're getting to 17. I do wonder if we need 5 from this committee. I think if we had 5 from the planning chairs, vice chairs, and then we had maybe another 7, which was perhaps made up of a couple from this committee, and then 5 other interested parties of councillors with the other 2 exec members. I think that gets us to what, 14? It's you know, it's a few less. No, am I right? Some maths right? Yeah, 14. Which just, I mean, even that sounds better than 17. But it may even need to be a little less. Maybe we don't need 5 other people if we've got 2 from this committee. But that's the only point I really want to make. No, sorry, there was another question. I'm going to pop back in quickly before you move on. Sorry. Well, Alison, I just wanted to check. I mean, I wasn't aware of this situation that you've explained where anything less than 10 houses is not going to go to committees. And obviously with lots of our rural villages, that's big impact in a lot of our villages where you can have 1 or 2 houses which are really controversial. And very concerning to me to hear that. And I just wondered, have we done any lobbying, or are we continuing to lobby on that issue?
If I could come in, Chair, just to say that the government are about to consult on that proposal, so that will be our opportunity to submit any comments. There were rumours that they were going to make the thresholds 100 homes. So the fact they're now going out for 10 is obviously reflective of some of the lobbying that's already taken place.
Can I just check, Alison, how do we feed into that process? Who will be providing the response?
I'm sure it'll be led by Councillor Rigby. When we get the consultation, we will make sure that everybody is aware of it, so we can, you know, you can feed in your views. I don't know how long we'll have in terms of submitting any feedback, and that will determine what course it takes in terms of whether it's an executive member a decision or whether it goes to a committee.
Let's come back. Do we have a position from our planning team as to what they feel on that proposal?
I think as professional officers, we don't have a view. Some authorities would already have a delegation scheme, which would mean that there's a threshold there. So there's a wide variety across the country. So I don't think we have, as officers, professional officers, a particular view. I think what will be dependent is whether or not there is any leeway for the delegation scheme to provide that where there are controversial schemes, they can be referred to committee by the relevant chief officer. we have to wait and see what the bill says.
Thank you. Henry Hobhouse.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm really concerned. We've yet again brought rights of way which have nothing to do with planning into a planning review. The knowledge about rights of way are in a different portfolio in highways, and we are already, Alison said at this committee a year ago that rights of way have absolutely nothing to do with planning. And I would ask this committee that if we could look at removing the light touch rights of way part of this working group and have a separate working group that actually has the opportunity to study the Blue Book, which is the Bible for rights of way. We have a situation where the portfolio holder, Richard Wilkins, has already had an admission that the correct procedure has not been done for the applications which are awaiting being looked at the moment. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Curly, particularly interested in this subject.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I mean, it does sort of sit under strategic planning, and I think the proposal here is to make a subcommittee of the strategic planning rather than for the terms of reference, rather than it be a subcommittee of this terms of reference. Is that correct? So is the subcommittee a subcommittee off of this other committee that we're setting up now for the terms of reference, or is it going to be a subcommittee off of strategic planning? That's the one thing that I wasn't sure about. I think would give some clarity to Henry, or is that in the remit of us to decide now?
Bob, do you want to pick that up?
Again, you'll see in terms of paragraph 11 of
Yes.
the report, does talk about the rights of way functions that are delivered as set out in the planning committee terms of reference by the strategic planning committee, and what types of rights of way matters go to that committee currently. Clearly there is an opportunity to investigate, and this has been raised previously, whether a separate rights of way subcommittee is a better way of determining those rights of way function. I think the thing we're flagging as part of this report is clearly if that is seen as one of the priority areas for us to do as part of the light touch review, then we can look at that. I think what we're trying to be open about is there are lots of different views regarding where there could be improvements to the planning committee terms of reference, and the light touch review can't accommodate all of these. So we will need the working group steer in terms of where do they prioritise, or equally this committee, when setting up the working group, could decide for the light touch review, we want the working group to focus on, you could decide that for the working group. That's within your power because the working group is created by this committee. So all of this is within your influence. I suppose what I'm just trying to, again, just be very clear about is between myself and Alison, we do only have limited capacity. So there are only certain things we can do. And we've also tried to flag that with that planning and infrastructure bill, that there are some parts which could get changed by government regardless of what we decide. So there is this balance between what we can realistically achieve and having an eye on what the government may change regardless of what we do.
Scott. Martin Wow.
I think as being a member of the strategic planning, this committee and planning committee, I'm beginning to get a bit confused, frankly, because the rights of way is a strategic planning committee matter. And surely if you're going to have a working party to review it, it should be dealt with by the strategic planning committee to set up their own working parties. That's what I think Henry is suggesting. And what we should be looking at, and what the important thing to look at, is the function of our planning committees, the 4 planning committees we've got. So I thought that's what we were dealing with, and rights of way seem to have got in. So my my view is we should be talking today about this, setting up this working party in terms of reference, to look at our planning committees functioning in the 4 old areas, and the rights of way should be taken out of here and passed back to the strategic planning committee. That would be my suggestion, Chairman.
Yeah. Martin, Scott.
Again, yeah, I mean, I can follow the logic of that proposal, which is, should there not actually be strategic planning committee that's currently got that responsibility? Should that not be able to decide how the rights of way functions are undertaken and oversee that review? So yes, there could be. There is already the option for strategic planning committee to decide to form its own working group and to look at rights of way matters and see whether there's a way to improve it. That could be done in parallel, in tandem, by itself. Or equally, this committee could ask strategic planning to consider that in terms of giving it a steer. I suppose what we've suggested from this proposal is you can do any of those combinations. We've recognised, though, that rights of way as an area is a matter that we know that a number of members have some questions, ideas about, and therefore we've been cognizant of that and therefore suggested it should be formed part of the working group. But Councillor Well is right. Alternatively, this committee could say, we're going to give a steer to the Constitution Working Group and ask them not to look at rights of way. Instead, we will ask the Strategic Planning Committee whether they wish to look at it and commission their own working group. So that could be a proposal, as Councillor Well has already set out.
People who want to come back, but I want to call in the people who haven't had the opportunity to speak, and I will have noted you and I will call you back. Barry.
Thank you, Chair. Just a point on the numbers of the committee being 17 is probably a bit unwieldy. There are actually 17 of us sat round here this morning, and committees tend to get unwieldy when they're not chaired properly, if I may say. And we seem to be getting along all right with 17 here this morning, so I suggest 17 is a good number and we leave it as it was. And the other very small point. What it was, I've said it now. No, there's 17 of us.
Yeah, I know you said you thought that was quite okay, didn't you?
Yeah, there's 17 of us around here this morning.
Yes, I heard that bit. I heard that bit as well. I did hear that bit as well. And you said 17. You didn't think it was unwieldy. As you said, there's 17 people in the room. Depends on the quality of the chairing. And Scott was saying to me about an issue about there's actually 13 on the committee. So, yeah.
I was going to say most councillors should be aware that committees, the vast majority of committees, are made up of 13 councillors. So again, just a thought, a suggestion for you to think about. A working group could fit that model in terms of being no more than 13 people, since that's what our committees have been operating at. But it was only just a point, unfortunately. Yes, whilst there may be 17 people, quite a number of those are officers rather than councillors.
Illustrate what 17 people.
Can I, for the chair, play devil's advocate a bit here, and I'll probably get shot down. That's fair enough. Helen quite rightly said that the previous review we had was too narrow in terms of just looking at the chairs and vice chairs, and there was a feeling amongst members of the committee that they were locked out of that discussion. So it's much wider now. So I get it. It maybe isn't ideal, but I don't want us to get in a position. I'm not going to try and start a debate on this, but I don't want us to get in a position where we'll set up a working group to decide on the number of members we're going to have on the working party. So I don't want to spend too much time on it. But yeah, no, I mean that's just what I'm saying. So I mean we can't have it always on that. It's either too narrow before and then too wide. I hear what you're saying, but I think, just from the chair's point of view, it's a light touch review. I think, it's been taking place on Microsoft Teams. It won't be face to face. I guess it will be challenging. The timescale's challenging. It's challenging to manage a group of 17 people, but I think it's not beyond the realms of the doable. But that's just my view as chairman. Stephen, did you want to come in? Did you? And then Theo.
I'm very aware Hugh had his hand up as well, Mr. Chairman. Just to be clear, are we actually talking about strategic planning being part of this review or development control? Because if it is essentially development control, which I think is what we're all really talking about, we've actually got 4, haven't we, across the county, 4 development control committees. And under those circumstances, would it actually make sense for there to be 4 members from the planning committees, chairs and vice chairs cohort, and then 4 members of this group, 4 from the non-committee membership along with the 2 members, so that automatically then and demonstrably fairly brings the numbers down into some sort of equal measure. But my sense has always been that what members are really concerned about is development control, not strategic planning. And if there are strategic planning issues, including rights of way, then that's probably all better left to them.
I think the key thing here is that this is intended to be a light touch review, and we've got to split, we've got to realise that if we want a light touch review, a light touch review is not going to talk about whether or not we hive off one function of a committee into another committee. That's part of a much bigger review. If we want to do a much bigger review, let's do a much bigger review, but we've decided not to do that until we've got the national scheme of delegation. I think that's perfectly reasonable. The sorts of things I would envisage a light touch review talking about are some of the things that are of particular concern to most members. So, public participation arrangements, the time members have to respond to consultations. That's the sort of stuff you do in a light touch review. If we're going to talk about changing the structures of things, I'm aware of my colleagues' thoughts over there, and I think he has perfectly reasonable views on that. I have worked at councils where they have similar structures to the ones that he's talked about. It's perfectly reasonable, but it's not part of a light touch review. And I just think we need to be clear on that. On the numbers, I agree that 17 is a massive number and should probably be brought down. And I think Councillor Pugsley may have hit upon an equitable answer which may help solve that.
Alison Blom-Cooper wants to come back and make some comments. Sorry, I didn't see your hand raised, Alison.
Yeah, I just wanted to come back on the point about Strategic Planning Committee not dealing with development management matters. It does, of course, have the remit to determine all minerals and waste applications and also any cross-boundary planning applications under the current terms of reference. And so that's why it was included as one of the committees to be looked at as part of this review.
Useful, Alison, a useful reminder. Hugh Davis.
Because I've been waiting patiently. And
My fault, I didn't see your hand. I do apologise.
Not only that, you're allowed one councillor here to speak 4 times. She stopped speaking and she started again. I thought, when is somebody else to be able to speak?
I think because they wanted to clarify, they had the floor and they were just clarifying in another point. But
4
I
times.
apologise for not seeing your hand, Hugh. I do really
4
do.
times. Chair, the only thing I want to touch on is the political structure of these committees. That's what's worrying me. So 17 is not over big, quite frankly. And I'm worried that my colleague over here can't count because it's 13 of us here. So we're making song and dance about things, which is going to have committees at the story, but they've got to be politically fair.
Thank you. Going to go back and then Tim, you want to come in, and then Helen, then Dawn.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to give my opinion on the committee size. I think that I was always told that you didn't really want to have committees of over 15 because they didn't tend to make terribly good decisions. And that's always been a rule that I've tried to stick to. I think in relation to this, I'm quite tempted to actually not go with the normal rule. And I think the reason for that is because we've got 4 disparate areas for planning. It's a large geographical area, and we actually need that input from that diverse area. And I think that suits a large committee in this particular case. I would not normally say that. I want to keep them below 15, but I think in this case, it's about gathering those opinions. Yeah. And I think 17 is appropriate. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
Hello, thank you. I've got 2 points. First, well, 2 proposals actually. The first one is the simple proposal to take out the rights of way review out of this, the terms of reference for this working group. So that would just be the first one. And the second one is taking what you said about the point about minerals and waste. That is interesting, actually, because what happened when the chairs and the vice chairs met last time is that they took away the ability of Mendip District, what was Mendip District area, to actually deal with the minerals and waste applications that were pending for several years in their area. And as soon as it was agreed by full council, there was an emergency meeting called of the strategic planning within a week, and they dealt with it. So it was actually, it felt very much like it was a power grab for some of us district councillors there. So I do think that including the issues of mineral waste and of the strategic issues is important. But again, that may be too big an area to look at again right now. You know, maybe that's one of the first things we have to do when we do our prioritisation exercises, whether or not to look at that. But my proposal was that the second proposal is that we should actually have a smaller committee, though it doesn't sound like this may be approved from hearing what Tim and various others have said. We've actually got 10 councillors in the room today, including Councillor. Yeah. Oh, on this committee. Oh, okay, yeah, okay. So I was going to suggest we could go back up to say, let's say 5 from the planning committee, from the planning committees, 5 representatives, 3 from here, from the actual this committee, 3 from outside this committee, and I think that they should be chosen on the basis of trying to get political balance. So if we get 3, let's say 3 Lib Dems volunteering here, then we need to get 3 from other parties from coming in from outside this Constitution and Governance Committee. Or we've also got to think about proportional the representation here, and then the 2 portfolio members, and that will bring it up to 13. That will be 13 people on the committee. So I'd like to suggest that we go for that. So that's 5 plus 3 plus 3 plus 2 as the way that we put the committee together. Personally, I still think that's a bit big, but I hear what other people are saying about having a big committee or versus a smaller one.
Do you have a seconder for those 2 amendments? Okay, Councillor Carswell. So if I've asked members then to speak on the amendments that have been made here, that Councillor Kay has said she wishes the rights of way function to be removed from the remit of this working group, not a committee. We're going to look at this light touch working group, and that I think we want strategic planning to look at that. And also you want 13 members on this working group, 5 from planning, chairs and vice chairs, 3 from here and 3 from members who are not aligned to either of those 2 bodies. And I ask members then to, can we focus now on actually dealing with these 2 amendments first, before we move on to the rest of the agenda.
And two portfolio members.
2 portfolio holders, sorry,
yeah.
yes, yeah.
In order to, and with a focus on trying to achieve some kind of political balance as well.
5 members from the chairs and vice chairs, 3 from Constitution and Governance, 3 who are not aligned to those bodies, and the 2 portfolio holders, but also aware of a political complexion of that. For instance, if you said if we had 3 members who were Lib Dem from this committee, then you want to see members from other parties on this other group. I'm not saying that's going to happen, but you wanted it to be quite proportional. I'll debate it. We're going to discuss it. Yeah. Councillor Johnson, you were next.
Okay, so I wanted to get some clarity from Alison that looking at the planning terms of reference, the light touch planning terms of reference, will that have anything within that relates to the strategic planning group and particularly to rights of way? So I just want to be clear that if we are looking at the planning terms of reference separate from rights of way, there's nothing that we should be looking at in the planning terms of reference related to rights of way. That was my first question. And the second one was with regards to the national scheme of delegation that we're waiting for, does that have anything within that related to rights of way?
Through you, Chair, I don't see any difficulty with separating out the rights of way function. We do need to look at the strategic planning committee function in relation to planning matters, so the minerals and waste applications and the other planning issues that strategic currently deal with, particularly in relation to making sure we have consistency and public participation arrangements, referral arrangements, etc. So I would want to include strategic planning committee insofar as it relates to the planning matters. In terms of the national scheme of delegation, I have no idea whether it's going to say anything about rights of way matters until we see what the government consulting on. We won't know, but I would doubt it. I think it is unlikely that it will include right of way.
Can I ask members now, should we just pin down this issue regarding the membership of the competition of this committee before we move on to any other discussions and anything else in this report? So I don't want this to get messy. So anybody who wishes to speak now, can we speak just on the proposal moved by Councillor Kay, seconded by Councillor Carswell, and then let's get that one out of the way, and then we can actually deal with any of the other questions relating to any other questions relating to this report. Is that okay? Martin, you want to speak about the Helen's amendment, do you?
Yeah, I would suggest, Chairman, that they are two separate matters, and the matter of the rights of way to planning committee is one matter. The
two separate proposals.
Will they be dealt with as such,
Chairman?
Chairman?
Two votes.
That's fine. That's fine. Thank you. That's all I need. Thank you.
Councillor Lovell.
Can you hear me now? Thank you. Obviously, the 5 planning members are representing each of those 5 committees. I not sure if we were clear about that before. So that obviously vices and chairs will have to decide which of them puts themselves forward in each case. But there isn't a case of any one committee having more than one vice chair or chair or vice chair. Yes. Thank you. Clarification. Thank you.
Then Stephen, you want to talk about the amendment? Yeah?
I do. Going on from Councillor Kay's, when she spoke, she said we would have 3 Liberals from this committee. I'm sure she didn't mean that.
As an example, she wasn't proposing that. Yeah.
And at the end, she managed to say politically balanced. With 3 members from this committee, can we be politically balanced? We've an independent, with Liberals and Greens and Conservatives.
Do that because the proportionality we want to get, just say it's 17 members or 13 or 15. We want the composition to be political across the whole group of the people on that working party. If you were then to try and break down the components of, which the chairs and vice chairs, the members of C&G, the members who aren't on the C&G, and the portfolio holders, it gets very, very messy to do it that way. And so I prefer not to do that. What I want to do, actually, let's get this issue dealt with, and I think deal with this off stage in terms of the 3 members or the 5 members of this committee who are going to do that. We'll go straight out after this committee meeting asking for people who are volunteers to do that. Okay.
Well, I was only going to say, Mr. Chairman, it's actually going to be very difficult to get political balance on it because I think I'm right in saying that the 5 chairs and vice chairs are probably of the leading party anyway. The 2 portfolio holders will be of the leading party, so you're probably starting off with at least 7 in the first place. So it will be very difficult, I think, to get political balance. I think we've just got to accept that we're all people of goodwill who represent the people of Somerset and do our level best, irrespective of party. However, I do think we need to make sure that there is good representation from the other parties as well, just to make sure that the result of any review is bought into by everybody else. So I'm sure, as you say, Mr. Chairman, off stage will be very wise to those points.
I make a proposal and actually say I want to move this one to a vote because we could spend an awful long time talking about this one, and it's very, very interesting, and we're councillors, we love this sort of thing, don't we? But I'm not sure how this would look to members of the public who are looking at the committee on. They probably won't find it quite as interesting as us. But I think it's a genuine issue. But I think let's try and put this one to bed then. So the first vote I wish to take place, which is proposed by Councillor Kay, seconded by Councillor Carswell, that we reduce the number of people on the proposed Light Touch working group, not a committee, from 17 to 13. And that would be 5 members of chairs and vice chairs, 3 from Constitution and Governance, not 5, 3 members from the non-committee membership, and the 2 relevant portfolio holders as well. That has duly been proposed and seconded. All those in favour? And all those against? And any abstentions? That's carried. That's carried. That's good. We've got some clarity there. And the second one is that we wish Helen Kay and Councillor Carswell have proposed that we move the proposals to look at the rights of way function for strategic planning committee to look at. And we would hope they would look at it. I think the understanding is we're not just asking them to look at it, but we want them to do something there, wouldn't we? All those in favour of that one? Vote for that one. And against? It's carried. Okay, so we're on 13 members. That's good. So we know what we're doing with that. Any other comments regarding this item, please, members? And I said, with the 3 members of Constitution and Governance, I've already had a member of the committee who's not here today actually volunteer for it. So, but I think it's fair to say that, and that's fair enough. It's fair to say that I think it will go straight out this afternoon, if that's possible, and ask for expressions of interest.
How are we going to manage that process? I mean, in terms of like how, if you get like 25 people all volunteering to be on it, because people feel passionately about planning. Yeah. So I'm just wondering how.
Because if they get lots of volunteers, we've just reduced the number of people
Well, I think
who can go on it.
I think the principle of the proportional, political proportionality is it could be part of our guide, and I think each group will have to decide who they're going to put forward within themselves. I think each political group has to look at that. Yeah, I'm sure we can work it out somehow.
I'm sure we work it out. Yeah. Scott, you only a guidance.
Again, I'm more than happy, just in terms of a proposal. I certainly get the spirit of what's proposed. I don't hopefully need to remind you that there are 6 political groups now on the council. So if you take 13, that's a fair number of the membership, just if you were to apply that principle. I think the spirit is that we try and achieve fair representation from the political groups. And for me, I think there's a balance that if I take political proportionality, something which I'm very much expert in, you will quickly find that 11 of the places are going to go straight away to the Liberal Democrat and Conservative members, which will leave you just with 2 for the other groups. So I think there is the guidance, I can see the steer that this committee is giving. I'd suggest that in terms of finalising the membership, that is something which the committee is happy for me to do in consultation with the chair, and between us we hopefully strike that balance appropriately.
It's fair enough. We've made the decision. It's absolutely fine. I completely accept it. But one of the byproducts of that decision is we have narrowed the number of members of this committee who can sit on that group. So there is a possibility there that somebody might be disappointed if we get 4 or 5 or 6 people wanting to go for 3 spaces. But that's fine. We've decided on that. And officers will go out this afternoon or Monday when they can fit that in, about asking for nominations for that. And myself and the vice chair and the officers will have a look at that, and in conjunction with the groups as well. Okay, thank you. So on the rest of the committee report, I therefore move forward then to the recommendation, which is consider and approve the proposals for the Constitution Working Group for planning and its proposed membership, which we've done so. The timescale and remit set out in the report. We've also looked at the report remit. We've changed the part of the remit, and we've changed the proposed membership as well. No, that's fair enough, though. No, I'm not being facetious. No, that's true. We've done that. We've had a good thorough. We've done everything that's said in the report. Yeah, sorry. Exactly. No, exactly. It's good. That's good. Yeah, it's good. It's good actually to tick that off. Actually, we've actually done what we're supposed to be doing. All those in favour? Any against? Okay, that's carried. And item number 7 is community governance review, CGR for Hewish, Episcopi and Langport, the initial consultation responses, page 243 and 260. You will be aware at the last committee meeting, last formal committee meeting, which dealt with not just the boundary review issues. We discussed this and we went out to consultation, and we had the 2 ward councillors here, Councillor Stanton and Councillor Wilkins as well, who gave us benefit of their advice. And Stephen, you've been managing this issue. Would you like to brief us on where you've got with it?
Chair, this report sets out the responses to the initial consultation. That the initial consultation is what is exactly in the petition in the first place. We opened the consultation period from the 17th of February to the 11th of April. This committee was subsequently date put back, so I extended that consultation period to get as much in as I could. We've had 13 responses, And I've set them out in full because I thought it is more useful for you to be able to read exactly what people are saying rather than me just summarising it. Although the petition recommended the dissolution of both parishes, it's now up to the council on the second stage for consultation to do whatever it likes almost with those parishes as way of a proposal. You could go for a single parish, you could go for warded parish, you could go for X number of members or Y number of members. But what I am suggesting is pretty much going along with that which was put forward in the petition, which is that the parishes be dissolved, a single parish, unwarded, with 11 members. I think the responses largely supported that conclusion, but we would have to go again to consultation, and I'll try and make the consultation as long as possible. That depends on future meetings of this committee. I can bring it back to. And get the actual response of the parishioners from both parishes again on what this council believes should happen. Chair, I've set out a lot in the report, so I leave it to members to consider A, the recommendations, and B, anything else following the last debate that we just had.
Really thorough debate on this last time with the two ward councillors. Neither of the ward councillors are here today, but they've made their views quite clear on this one. Any members wish to comment on Stephen's report on the latest piece of work on this one, which is ongoing? Councillor John.
Thank you, Stephen. I just needed some clarity on the fourth point that says it won't be warded. I don't quite understand what that actually means. It's my ignorance, I'm sorry.
Currently, Jewish Episcopacy has wards within it. But the proposal is that there are no wards, it's just a single unwarded parish.
Thank you, Chair. Well, I'm really pleased that this has progressed as far as it has. As the neighbouring division, I think that this is something that Langport and Hewish do actually need. I just want to draw everyone's attention to the appendix and the number of responses from the public. I think that was really useful, and it really gives a flavour of the debate that is going on within Langport and Hewish. I certainly took heart in reading some of those. Certainly there are a few that seem to be the old rehearsed arguments that have come around again and again when they've tried to do this. But reading, there seems to be a lot of movement within the attitude of the population. I think that was demonstrated quite well in the appendices in some of those there. So I think that was really, really useful. I am really pleased to support this, and I'd be happy to propose it. Thank you, Chair.
Do we have a seconder? Councillor Wale. Councillor Wale, Councillor Davis, do you wish to speak? Okay, so I saw it. And you're almost in unison with Councillor Wale. So. Okay, so let's allow, I'll tell you what, let's allow Hugh to be the seconder then, okay. And then allow Martin to speak and then Helen Chaos.
This is, I think, the third time that I've had the pleasure of this argument and discussion. And both the previous occasions that it has been roundly rejected by Hewish Episcopacy and very roundly the last time we did it at South Somerset District Council, and I'm somewhat surprised that that doesn't seem to be the opinion on this occasion by the populace. But having said that, if it's up to them what they want, and I'd go along with it. But I have some doubts about the popularity of this among the village of parishes of Hewish, frankly.
Stephen, do you want to come back? If you just brief us again about sort of the consultation. There is broad support, we think, from Hewish Episcopacy, isn't there?
Well, we did have the 176 people signing the petition, which I thought was in itself an indication that there is some support. I mean, obviously, that's not a total percentage of the overall electorate, but one can only go with the facts as we receive them. And the criteria are quite important, really, here. We're looking at, it reflects the identities and interests of the community, and I think they are, for all intents and purposes, a single community, as I see it, and effective and convenient local government. Well, it would be effective and convenient if they have one parish council between them, or it was just one parish. And that's how I came to the conclusions that I did, Chair, and put these recommendations before you.
Tim Curley is going to give us a local knowledge.
Yeah, so a little bit of local knowledge to this is that I think the trigger in the last 2 times that have meant that it was so unpopular was actually the way that they went about doing it. So I think that Hewish very much felt that it was Langport taking them over and it felt like a hostile bid. I think this time they learned the lessons of those previous, and I think that they approached it as a joint venture. And I think that actually reads within some of the appendices myself. So I think you are right, there's always going to be a kernel of opposition to these things, but I think the wider opposition that was triggered by it not being done correctly has been amended and changed. So I think there is a bit of a different attitude in Hewish this time. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Helen Kay.
Throwing a cat amongst the pigeons. Reading some of these, I understand that there is still perhaps some people in the villages that still feel that they're not very happy about this. And I'm just wondering if having wards, you've said that we're going to not have any wards, is one way that they can, and there's an issue about people feeling that their identity may be eroded away. But by having wards, you could actually have a ward that has the name of a village or a name of a part of town or whatever. If you had 11 wards, then some of that sort of local identity could be kept, and also you would get old people that are parish councillors, perhaps at Hewish Episcopi, being able to put themselves forward specifically to represent their area. Now, the only problem with that is having, as we've already gone through the Boundary Commission review ourselves, is that it's a lot of work to then decide exactly where those boundaries are going to be, and I don't know if there's obvious boundaries or not. So bearing in mind, if we just want to kind of get on with this, that might complicate things to start thinking about wards. My next question is, if we go ahead without wards now, is there a possibility that later down the line, they can come back and say, actually, 5 years on, 3 years on, whatever, we're doing it, but actually we still feel that we would actually be able to represent our particular bit of the new parish better if we had wards. Can they come back and do that later? Thank you.
Stephen, can you come back? But can I just, before Stephen comes in, just want to point out, we are only approving the recommendations to go forward for the second stage of consultation. This isn't the end of the process.
Yes, that's right. This will be going to another round of consultation, and that may well be an answer which comes back to us, and in which case we could incorporate it. And we're likely to carry out or the council is likely to carry out a council-wide community governance review at some point following the next election. It's also helpful not having wards if they follow the existing parish boundaries, because the existing parish boundaries go through houses. So we would have to look at how we ward it in any event.
Can I ask for clarification? Can I ask for clarification? So the recommendation is that we, at the moment, that we have a new parish council without a warding scheme, and that is what then goes out for consultation. Okay, my apologies.
And the good burghers of Langport and Hewish Episcopi then have ample opportunity to raise any of these issues or not for the second stage of the consultation. Oh, just a bit of housekeeping as well. For the person who asked if we're okay, they were on to mute. We are all okay, I think. But just please, just remember, I think particularly for people who aren't in the room, just make sure you're on mute when you're not speaking, because yeah, we can hear things. I run courses online all the time, and have done for 5 years. You wouldn't give a credence to some of the things I've heard when people haven't been on mute. So if somebody asking we're okay, it's absolutely fine. But just do remember, please, to keep yourself on mute, because we can all hear things. Can we then move forward to the recommendations to consider the initial consultation responses, which we've done, the Community Governance Review for Hewish, Episcopi and Langport, and to approve the recommendations for the second stage of the consultation? I think that's really critical. We're going forward to the second stage of consultation. Everything that we've discussed and any other further issues we may not have thought of have an ample opportunity to be aired at that stage. All those in favour? And against? That's carried. Moving on to item number 8, which is the Constitution and Governance Committee Annual Report for 24-25, 261 to 264 page. And I'm going to invite Scott to introduce this one, please.
Thank you, Chair. You'll forgive me in part just initially around, happy as always to introduce, but just to flag, my colleague Pippa Triffett has drafted all of this annual report in reality. My part is merely just to bring out the highlights for you. Hopefully what you will see throughout this annual report are a summary of those key areas of the debate and key areas of focus that you've had over the last 12 months. Why do we produce an annual report? Not just for public transparency, but also for a constitutional reason, which is that committees of council are required to produce annual reports and report them up to full council, which helps set out the areas that they have achieved over the previous 12 months. So that's the reason why you have an annual report here to cover both of those points. And again, this is here for your comment upon. If you think there are some things that you would like us to emphasise more or add, again, that's open to the committee. But hopefully, following the conclusion of this debate, whatever the final version of this annual report is, that will be what goes forward to the council meeting on the 21st of May.
I think of this year, actually, we've done quite a lot. Actually, we've revisited again the planning issues and the terms of reference to the Constitution, and we've also done a lot electorally as well. Don't forget, I think one thing I was particularly interested in, other members of the committee were a bit of work when we actually reviewed the initial soundings before the general election of the new legislation on voter ID. Remember, we were the very first part of the country which had a parliamentary election which people had to produce voter ID to vote. And it's quite interesting, the statistics of that election there were that I think there was slightly more people were turned away or had issues with that than they did in the general election. It took time to bed down, didn't it? But it's interesting to look at those statistics. And also we've had the boundary review as well, which took up some time, and we got there in the end. And we were revisiting that again, no doubt, after the Boundary Commission, LGBCE, produced their report coming forward in early June. And members,
to propose it and thank the authors for the clarity and of the work we've done over the past year.
I'd agree with that. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Pugsley? All those in favour? That is carried. Thank you. And moving swiftly on to item number 9, which is the work programme, page 265 to 266. Then members like to have a quick, this has been pre-circulated. Any comments on the proposed work programme for the next year? Councillor Kay?
Only that it's got autumn 2025 planning terms of reference mid-review report recommendations, which is why I asked if it could be moved to the July meeting. So if we could try and aim for the July meeting, because I think that's too late. Yeah.
Understood. I mean, it's going to be very tight, but that was understood that we're aiming for the July meeting.
All right, so that just needs to be changed. That line needs to be changed. Yeah.
Any other comments on the proposed work programme? Councillor Johnson.
Just returning to the points made about the LCNs and whether that could be added to the programme, whether that comes before or after the reviews that are taking place, I don't mind, but I do think the terms of reference need a revisit.
Will be added to the work programme, definitely. Any other comments? We move to the recommendation. We agreed to notes, any amendments which we've looked at, and we've already listened to Councillor Kay, and we're going to move forward that one for the planning review from autumn to July, and we're going to add Councillor Johnson's request, the review of the local community networks. All those in favour? That is carried. And then I therefore formally close the meeting. Thank you.